Well, it's good to see everybody here this morning. If you want to have your Bibles open to Matthew 13, I've got two verses to look at in Matthew chapter 13 in just a moment. And this is our second Sunday of the month, so this is a shorter lesson, and that's fine because sometimes what Jesus had to say was really quite brief. And, you know, how much more comment can you offer than just what we have 10 or 15 minutes here before we break for our group meeting. So, very short lesson here from Matthew 13, and then we will break for our group meetings. And if you don't know where to go, just ask any one of our elders or deacons. They can direct you. If you're visiting with us today, we're very glad you're here. I really appreciate you being with us today. And what we do every second Sunday is we break into smaller groups and talk about some of the things in our church that we can do to help each other out, making meals and visiting and sending cards and that sort of thing. If you just want to stay here in the auditorium during that time, that's perfectly fine. If you'd like to join us in any one of our groups, we have nothing to hide, and we do like to share with other people the things that we do in our church. So whatever you feel like doing during that time period as a visitor, you're more than welcome. You're here at home with us, and we hope you feel that way. So here in Matthew chapter 13, we want to talk about what Jesus describes as one pearl of great value. And it's very apropos, all the songs that Drew picked, because that's the point of this parable. That when you can make Christ and His kingdom the singular goal, the almighty and beautiful treasure of your life, everything else just kind of pales in comparison. Or like Matt read from our scripture reading a moment ago from Philippians, everything else just kind of feels like garbage. Refuse, you know, it's just you can kind of toss it, throw it away. Suddenly it just doesn't seem that valuable anymore. And so here in Matthew chapter 13, let's read together just two verses. Matthew 13, verses 45 and 46, as Jesus offers this parable about the kingdom. He says in Matthew 13, verse 45, "Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking fine pearls. And upon finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold all that he had and bought it." And let's go ahead and make some comments through this passage as we go. And then the lesson will be yours. First of all, the kingdom of heaven. Jesus uses this term kingdom of heaven a number of times in Matthew 13. You might even call this like the chapter of kingdom parables. He's talked a great deal about how the kingdom of heaven is like seeds and sowing seeds, and the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, and the kingdom of heaven is like a little bit of leaven that gets put into a lump of dough, and the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. And he just talks a lot about the kingdom of heaven. What exactly are we talking about when he talks about the kingdom of heaven being like this merchant seeking fine pearls? Well, one thing that you can say about the kingdom of heaven is it's something that can be possessed now. The kingdom of heaven is not something that you're waiting for. And I know I'm being silly using modern terminology here, but this merchant, it's not that he found the perfect pearl on Amazon and now he's waiting 2 weeks for it to get delivered. It's that he found the pearl, it was right there in front of him, and he did everything that was needed to possess it right now. He didn't put a down payment on the pearl. He's not waiting for the pearl to be delivered. This is not some pearl that's like been promised to him. He has this pearl available to him right now. And when he sells everything that he has, he can go and have that pearl. So whatever the kingdom of heaven is, at least in some sense, it is available to us to possess right now. We're not waiting for it to be delivered later. Several passages, of course, up here on the screen. From Matthew, for example, several times in Matthew, like in Matthew 4, verse 17, it talks about how Jesus went and preached about the kingdom. And he said, the kingdom is at hand. Like, you're looking at it, like it's happening. Like, whatever the kingdom is, it's happening. John the Baptist was the same way. John the Baptist preached about how the kingdom of heaven was at hand. It's here, guys. It's coming. It's right here. A couple other passages here. Take John 18, verse 36, where Jesus is talking to Pontius Pilate, and Pilate's asking him, so, I've heard that you're a king. They're saying you're a king, and that's got me kind of confused or intrigued. So, are you in fact a king? And Jesus says, well, my kingdom is not of this world. And if my kingdom were of this world, then my followers would be rising up and fighting for me. But as it is, my kingdom is not of this world. Now, he doesn't talk about the kingdom like it's coming later or anything. He talks about my kingdom is something, and it's here, but it's not what you think that it is. It's not measured in what you think. And I think the perfect passage is from Hebrews chapter 12, and I really like it here. In Hebrews chapter 12, although he doesn't use the phrase, the kingdom of heaven, like Jesus uses in these parables, I think we would be really hard-pressed to say we're talking about something different here than the kingdom of heaven that Jesus talks about in his parables. In Hebrews chapter 12, beginning in verse 22, it says, but you have come to Mount Zion. So you're not coming to it later. You're not going to come to it in a few years. You're not going to come to it after you die. You have come. You who are believers, you who are saints, you have come to this. You have come to Mount Zion. You've come to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, to myriads of angels, to the general assembly and the church of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven. You've come to that. When you become a Christian, everything he says there in verses 22 and 23 is before you right now. And he says you're enrolled in heaven. And I think that's what Jesus is talking about here. Not that you're literally in heaven now. The kingdom of heaven is not you being in heaven right now. The kingdom of heaven is your citizenship in heaven. The kingdom of heaven is, like Hebrews 12 says, your enrollment in heaven. The kingdom of heaven is you being, as he says here, at Mount Zion and in the city of the living God and in the heavenly Jerusalem and in the general assembly and in the church of the firstborn. And I think that's such a really cool thing there. And I guess out of 2 verses in Matthew 13, we're going to have a really hard time being done in 12 minutes, huh? That's just tough. Because you read these parables, and what seem like such simple things on the outside, you go, there's a lot in there. And so he also talks about it's like a merchant seeking. Great point here. The kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking. Is the kingdom of heaven going to be something that you just kind of accidentally find, or you sort of backdoor your way into it, or, like you just woke up one day and you just sort of tripped your way into heaven? No, it's, who finds the pearl of great value? The person looking for it. You know who's never going to find the pearl of great value? The one who never seeks it. If you're not seeking the pearl, you're never going to find it. If you're not looking for it. And I appreciate that Jesus points out this merchant was seeking something. And what was he seeking? He was seeking fine pearls. What was his standard? Was his standard just kind of like junk? Was his standard like, well, whatever works or whatever will satisfy me for now? Was his standard like, well, I don't really, one kingdom is as good as another kingdom. One pearl is as good as another pearl. If you are a pearl merchant and you know what you're doing, you're one of those guys. See, I'm not a high roller or anything, so I don't go into jewelry stores. But in jewelry stores, there's those guys that have the little things in their pocket and they pull it out and they go, the little magnifying glass. I'm not rich enough that I don't interact with people like that a whole lot. But that's who this guy is. He's got his little magnifying glass out and he's going, he knows the difference between the good stuff and the junk. He knows the difference between the counterfeits and the real thing. You know what he's seeking? He's not seeking garbage, that's for sure. As Christians, here's the challenge. Are we the merchants seeking fine pearls, or are we people just kind of satisfied with ho-hum whatever? You know what Christianity is? You know what our faith is? It is fine. It is exquisite. It is the very, very best. The faith of Jesus Christ is not just some religion. It's not just one among many. Just pick whichever one you want in some marketplace of religious values and faith systems. The kingdom of heaven is absolutely the best. And if you're not looking for the very best, time to change your viewpoint or your priorities. And finding one, I like how it's finding one. And I checked different translations, the ESV, New King James, NIV, New American Standard. They all say one, not a pearl. It doesn't say, and finding a pearl of great value. He says, finding one pearl. And maybe that seems like a subtle difference, and maybe I'm splitting hairs here. But even in our own language, the specificity of saying one versus a. I found a car, and I think I'm going to buy it, versus I found the one car that I want to buy. Like, even in our own language, there seems to be like an emphasis being placed on it. The kingdom is like not a pearl that he finds. It is like one pearl. One pearl that is so unique that it is the pearl of great value. And we've already read from Philippians chapter 3. We know what that passage says. That when Paul found out about Jesus and the resurrection that was offered in him and the power of that resurrection, he says, I just regarded everything else as junk. It was all junk, refuse. I dropped it, I sold it, I got rid of it, I put it in the garbage pile because of the one thing that I could find in Jesus that can't be offered anywhere else, which is salvation from sin and death. The solution to my two greatest problems. And we're bought with things that are more precious than gold. Peter talks about that in 1 Peter chapter 1 in several different verses. But you were bought not with perishable things like silver or gold, but that which is imperishable. You know why? Because we want our inheritance to be imperishable. I don't want the kingdom of heaven to be something that gets boring after a while. I don't want to get to heaven and go like, oh man, as it turns out, we really are just going to be sitting on clouds wearing robes playing harps for eternity. Oh man! I don't want to get to heaven and find out that that's what it is. I definitely don't want to get to heaven and find out like, hey, heaven is basically like earth, but just a little bit better. It's like playing golf every single day. I don't want to play golf every day for the rest of eternity. And I don't care how much you like golf, you don't either. You don't. It is a pearl of great value because it is like no other pearl. It is imperishable. It is inexhaustible. It never gets boring. It never gets old. It is worth selling every other thing in your life so that you can have it, to possess it, to be part of it. That's how valuable it is. Now, maybe that sounds a little bit reckless to some people. You mean he sold everything he had for one stinking pearl? No. He sold everything he had for one pearl of great value. And the moment that he saw it, because he knew what he was looking at, because he was an expert, because he was looking for fine pearls and he would not accept anything substandard, when he found that pearl, that one pearl of great value, he said, this is worth everything else. And again, we might think that's kind of reckless. But it's all about context, isn't it? I think a lot of people only see the small picture in life. They'll look at a very deeply religious person and they'll say, so you're telling me if you're watching TV and it says TVMA up in the corner, you're telling me you wouldn't watch a really, really good TV program just because it says TVMA. So you've never seen Game of Thrones? Nope. Not a single episode of it. So you're telling me that if Mr. Boss Man is looking to bump somebody up a level, they're looking to promote someone, and he's just saying, listen, the person who's the go-getter, The person willing to work extra hours, maybe even a Sunday here and there, that really would impress me. And you're telling me that you would let someone else get a promotion at work because you don't want to work extra hours and miss a Sunday. You're telling me that. You'd sell everything for one pearl. Yes. Because I don't take the small view, the small perspective. Because the big perspective is, I might not get that job, I might not get that promotion, I might lose out on some entertainment, I might lose a friend, I might feel alienated or isolated in this life. But I really, really don't want to go to hell. And I really, really want to go to heaven. And if you factor that in, then suddenly selling everything you have for one pearl of great value doesn't sound reckless anymore. That actually sounds like the really smart decision. And I hope that you continue to make that smart decision. And if you haven't, then you need to sit down and talk to one of us. Talk to me. Talk to one of our elders. Find someone you're comfortable with talking to about this, and let's help get those priorities straight. Sell everything so that you can have the one thing that actually is going to matter for